শুনতে পাচ্ছ? হ্যালো হ্যালো, একদম ঠিক আছে, ওকে। হ্যাঁ নারায়ণ, শুনতে পাচ্ছ? আমি বুবাই বলছি, শুনতে পাচ্ছ? একবার পোডিয়ামে যা না, পোডিয়ামে যা, একবার একবার যা।
morning, everybody. We would like to start the session. Our chairperson for the session is Dr. K.P. Sharma. Sir, would you please? Dr. K.P. Sharma is Superintendent of Bihar Institute of Mental Health and Allied Sciences.
Good morning, everyone. My topic for the paper presentation is perceptions of partner drinking problems, regulation strategies, and relationship outcomes. Alcohol use is considered as a source of strain in marital relationships. So the substance use is considered as the third most cited reason for divorce, and the rates of separation and divorce are considerably higher among the couples with an alcohol abusive or and dependent partner. Studies of clinical samples of alcoholics shows that spouses are relatively more anxious, involved in lesser social activities, and go through more stressful life events. In reaction to recognizing an emerging or underlying drinking problem, individuals who are concerned about the drinker may act by attempting strategies to abstain, switch, or control their partner's drinking pattern. These attempts include the acts such as threatening to leave the partner, discriminating the partners when they are drunk, withholding from intimate relationships and sexual acts. Gathering all the family members and exposing the partner's drinking problem so as to create an insight about their drinking patterns and its effect on the family and the marital relations. The aims and objectives of the study are to assess the perceptions of partners' drinking problems, to assess the effectiveness of regulation strategies among Indian married couples, and their relationship outcomes. The inclusions are the married couples, wives of male alcoholic patients, participants willing to take part in the study. Exclusions are unmarried patients, divorced and separated couples, participants not willing to take part in the study. This is a cross-sectional study which consisted of the sample taken from the partners of 30 patients who are admitted for alcohol de-addiction at Mamata General Hospital, Khammam, Telangana. The study period was from the 1st October 2019 to 31st December 2019. The samples were drawn by convenient sampling method. The tools used are thinking about partners drinking and partner management strategies, a 26 and a 19 item questionnaire. The results of the study were analyzed and evaluated by using the mean standard deviation and by obtaining the Pearson correlation principle. The results were analyzed using SPSS software version 22. These are the results. The graph here shows that the more is the thinking about the partner, that effective are the management strategies by the partner. In the management strategies, it is divided into two categories. One is the punishment strategy and the other is the reward strategy. The responses of the punishment strategies, as you can see, pouring out of the drinks and punishment, they didn't get enough responses from the sample. And the reward strategies, such as suggesting alternative alcohols other than alcohol, also didn't show the major number of responses. The thinking about the partners drinking, almost all the questionnaires in the item, they were responded well, which indicates that the partners are very much thinking about their partners drinking. The existing studies of Rodriguez and neighbors provided new measures to assess the parameters that are essential for determining the role of one's own perceptions in association between alcohol use and relationship outcomes. Yoshika 92 studies results provide practical evidence for partner management strategies, that is, avoid punishing strategies. The wives who felt that their husband's drinking was a source of strain in the marital relationship considered regulating their pattern of alcohol intake by either punishment strategies or the rewarding strategies, whichever was effective in motivating the patient for pushing themselves to seek the medical help for de-addicting from the alcohol use. The more the partners were thinking about the drinking pattern, the significant were the regulation strategies. Antony Pickristino studies show that these reward strategies, though they didn't show a significant effect, they didn't show a prominent improvement in change of relationship outcome. It further showed an impact to again crave for the more alcohol intake. As it was evident that the relationship dissatisfaction was a factor which was motivating them towards effective management by implementing the punishment strategies, are capable to an extent in controlling the partner's intake. The drinking pattern of the partner has significantly interfered the sex life of the partners. They also didn't feel the intimacy with their partner because of the drinking pattern. The study adds to the existing studies by determining the ideology of Indian married couples and their perception towards their drinking problem and their regulating attempts. Certain items from the questionnaire weren't applicable in the study group, such as pouring out drinks, pouring and suggesting alternatives of alcohol use to their partners. Results also strongly established the compatibility of partners to take up the additional burden of the families due to partners' negligence, and they often feel embarrassed to get into the public and the family gatherings because of the partner's uncontrolled behavior because of the alcohol intake. These are my references. Thank you.
This topic you have elaborated very well, and the main point of the topic was the drinking problem in the partner and interference, how much outcome comes by this outcome. And you correctly told that the relationship problem must be improved. That is one of the cause of this. If they don't have interaction with each other at the sexual family level, then no other measure, throwing the drink or showing some alternative, much of it. Okay. Any question from the audience? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No question.
Dr. Vinita.
Good morning to respected chairperson and the presenting audience. So today my paper is on a case study which is opioid withdrawal delirium. So as you know, opioid is a psychoactive substance which has been used for analgesic and other medicinal purposes. So continued use of opioid can cause syndrome of abuse and dependence and withdrawal symptom. Opioid withdrawal symptom includes muscle cramps, body ache, rhinorrhea, watering of eye, decreased sleep, yawning, fever, and diarrhea. So, opioid withdrawal symptom usually occurs within 6 to 24 hours after last dose of opioid and subsides over 5 to 7 days. It is a rare condition, though it is more common in alcohol. So here, my case is on opioid withdrawal delirium. The case, now I am going to describe about the case, which is 20 years old unmarried man having from urban background was brought to LGBT OPD by his family member, and he was brought for the addiction purpose. Uh, his history shows that he has a history of regular user of heroin in injection form for last 5 years and occasional user of alcohol and cannabis for last 1 year. Initially, he used to take opioid for 100 and 200 rupees worth of heroin, and gradually for last 2 years, he increased to 1000 and 2000 rupees. His last intake was 2 days before admission in the hospital. In last 2 years, he became aggressive and abusive towards his family member while in intoxicated state, and when he develops withdrawal symptoms like body ache, rhinorrhea, and decreased sleep. Initially, he got money for substance for his own earning, but now for 2 years his work function has diminished, and he started to demand money from his family member. He has also history of occasional use of alcohol and cannabis, but there is no significant history in the past and in family. His general physical and systemic examination did not reveal any significant finding, and on mental status examination he reveals his psychomotor activities increased, uncooperative, he was not oriented to time, place, and person. He was restless, agitated, and his speech was irrelevant. His judgment and insight was also poor. On laboratory investigation, it is in normal limit, and he was diagnosed as a case of opioid withdrawal delirium, and he was started on tablet tramadol 300 milligram and tablet cordisoproxide 30 milligram per day, and injection haloperidol 10 milligram per day, and injection promethazine 50 milligram per day intramuscularly. He was also given intravenous fluid as he refused to take food, and after 48 to 72 hours, his delirium has subsided, and the oral medication was tapered up over next 14 days. He was started with tablet naltrexone 50 milligram per day, and he was discharged. So, in discussion, opioid withdrawal delirium, it is a rare case. But usually, substance-induced delirium is more common in alcohol. But their literature shows this. Parker et al. Reported 4 cases, and Agarwal et al. He also reported 1 case of opioid withdrawal delirium. In one comparative study on 136 opioid users in India and Nepal by et al. And Raj et al. Reported a case of opioid withdrawal delirium without convulsion, which is later maintained with tablet naltrexone 50 mg. Parker et al. Reported 4 cases of opioid dependence, of which 3 cases developed convulsion during detoxification phase, and later they developed delirium. In one study in this study, they found that patient develops opioid withdrawal delirium, and maximum of them are injectable users. So, as literature showed that many cases of opioid withdrawal delirium, patients were having user of opioid, and maximum of them are injectable user. Pure form of opioid has fewer chances to develop delirium than the street variety. In our case, though, the purity of opioid is not known, but the patient is an injectable user, and he did not give any history of convulsion. So I like to conclude with that while managing in opioid withdrawal cases, psychiatrists should be cautious because this is a rare and life-threatening condition. So hope this case will show light in this aspect. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vinita. It was well presented, and this is the normal history of a quiet year. Delirium do occur, as your case was having also addiction to cannabis and
Yes, sir.
alcohol, and especially those cases. I am attended the hospital and meeting these cases, and initial few days are very dramatic. Most of the patients, they say that just chill me, doctor. I will have withdrawal, I will have delirium, and I can damage something. So, it's a common thing. The delirium may not be so common as you have stated, but the withdrawal is really strong, especially those are intramuscular or IV users. And especially your case was associated with alcohol abuse and cannabis abuse as well. So those cases, and besides all these drugs you have described, naproxen, main thing is psychotherapy of the patient and making the family understand what is the basic problem besides is multiple drug abuse in these patients, and those points should be taken care of. Until unless you follow the patient at the social level, you cannot treat these patients. They will again lapse into opioid dependency. Anyhow, they will have money from some source and will start using opioid again. Thank you very much. Any question from the audience? Thank you, Dr. Bill.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, I would like you to please felicitate our participants. Dr. Vivek Kumar. Dr. Vinita. Thank you so much, sir.
সার্টিফিকেট কিছু করে একদম কোনো 3 নম্বর আমার তো কিছু করে না 3 মিনিট কেমন কিছু আমি আসছি আমার একদম
very great idea. अभी एक suppose में I saw that way you can मतलब 5 minutes वहाँ जो गए थे अंडमान में तो नहीं यहाँ पे ऐसा वेबसाइट है कल अजय को मैं अपने घर में मिल पा दिया वो कहीं और
morning, everyone. I am Dr. Piyush Mahajan. I am working as a senior resident in Private Medical College of Amritsar, and along with me is my professor and head, Dr. P.D. Garg. So we are presenting this topic, risk factors for relapse among hero-independent subjects, a prospective study. It was my thesis topic. Introduction: as you all know, hero-independent subjects upon treatment for detoxification can have a variable course ahead. They may lapse or relapse. Lapse is surrendering to the desire but not returning to the same pattern as pre-abstinence levels. Relapse, on the other hand, is a conscious choice to return to the same pattern as before the pre-abstinence levels. So various risk factors can be there, including socio-demographic profile that contribute to relapse. My aims and objectives was to study the socio-demographic profile of hero-independent subjects attending the de-addiction center for admission and to study the risk factors for relapse in such subjects. Materials and methods. My present study was a descriptive, longitudinal, tertiary care hospital-based study including 200 subjects that were admitted in Swami Vivekanand Drug De-Addiction and Treatment Center, and they were followed for 1 year. A diagnosis of substance dependence was made as per ICD-10 criteria. The subjects were administered upon admission socio-demographic proforma, and after their discharge, they were administered a semi-structured proforma for risk factor assessment that was applied to the relapsed patient at follow-up. Inclusion criteria: patients who gave their consent for the study, who were 14 and above of both sexes, those patients who presented to the psychiatry department diagnosed as hero-independent according to ICD-10 and admitted to de-addiction center. Exclusion: patients who did not give consent, patients who refused to get admission, mentally retarded patients, that is intellectually disabled patients, major cognitive dysfunction, existing medical condition, any that would interfere with the treatment. So this is an outlook. Inclusion: patients were selected, inclusion-exclusion criteria applied, 200 patients admitted for this many period, and this is DRIT is dropout and did not, the patients who left the study protocol at the starting. After that, 189 patients were followed in first visit. Out of them, dropouts, first visit was at 10th day. Out of them, dropouts were 4. After 10 days of discharge, 4 of them dropped out of the treatment, 15 of them relapsed, and 116 of them were lapsed, and abstinent were 54. Further, we followed the relapsed patients. Relapsed patients were applied the risk factor proforma, and out of them, dropouts were 1 and relapsed were 18, lapsed were 84 and abstinent were 67. So as this protocol ended, in the end we had at the last visit 6 patients who relapsed and dropouts were 1. My observations were these are the socio-demographic profile observations. Most of my patients were in the age group of 14 to 29 and 30 to 45. That is, mostly were in the age group of between 14 to 45 years of age. All were male, and education status, mostly they were of equivalent to higher secondary. Occupation, most of them were farmers, and after that 22.5% were unemployed. And out of 200 patients, mostly were married, and mostly 48% were living in a nuclear family. 76% belonged to a rural background, and age of first heroin use was about 35 years as per my study. Distribution of total sample according to the total monthly income. Most of the patients had a mean family income of about 22,584. The reason for drug use among most of the patients was peer pressure. Peer pressure was the most common observation. Second to that was curiosity purpose. And the third was for sexual performance. And most of the patients, not most, half of them were IDUs and other half was non-IDUs. Distribution of patients according to the duration of heroin dependence. 63% of the patients had a heroin dependence history of about 1 to 5 years. Distribution of sample according to the total duration of substance dependence. Most of them, 55%, were in the range of 1 to 10 years. Distribution of patients according to the number of previous detoxifications. 50% of the patients had 2 or more detoxifications in the past. That means they had already taken treatment in the past for the drug dependence. Monthly expenses of the patient, 47 or 40, equal number of patients were in the range of 15,000 to 14,000 they were earning per month. Distribution of patients according to the duration of heroin dependence. 63.5% of the patients were in the range of 1 to 5 years. Distribution of sample according to the total duration of substance dependence. 55% of them were in the range of 1 to 10. Sorry, it is going lapse. According to the study, 39% of the patients relapsed at the end of 1 year, and according to my study, lapsed patients were about 58%. Visit of relapse. Most of my patients relapsed on the 3rd visit, and most of the lapsed patients, about 53%, converted from lapse to relapse. Dropouts, 17% dropped out of my study. Visit of dropouts. Mostly the patients dropped out at the first visit itself. During the detoxification period, followed by the 3rd visit. So mostly for patients dropped out either during the treatment or at the 3rd visit. Dropouts reasons or the causes of dropouts. Most of the dropouts were due to migration, that the patient was living there or he shifted to some other state or city and he dropped out due to that. And the second reason, the most common that was observed, was dropout due to incomplete treatment during admission. That is, the patient did not complete their detoxification and they voluntarily left the treatment. Other reasons were dropout due to death of the patient, dropout due to the status was unknown, the reason the patient was never seen, and dropouts due to imprisonment, because the drug addicts in Punjab, they are mostly facing legal problems like NDPS, so some were arrested and they did not report in the study. So risk factors for relapse, 62% and 61% of the patients had risk factors that included peer pressure, that was a little far behind per capita income more than 2,000 per month. So the patients who were earning more and who had a peer pressure, peer group that was involved in heroin use were mostly responsible for facing a relapse. Others were indulgence in drug selling activities, those who were themselves involved in selling drugs, liking or risk-taking behavior. Some had a personality or a predisposition for taking drugs. Any craving for the drug, any stressful episode that was also leading to such relapses, anger outbursts, personality issues, less motivated patients, those who were not motivated to quit, divorced patients. So these are all the risk factors I noted during my study. Number of risk factors the patients had, mostly 69 or 70% of the patients had multiple risk factors. That is 5 to 6 risk factors were there. Results, association of duration of heroin use with the status of relapse. So this was highly significant. Longer the duration of heroin use in the past, the more the chances of relapse were there. And association of status of IV drug use with the relapse. So IV drug users were more associated with relapse than non-IDUs. So this was also significant from my study. Association of number of previous detoxification with status of relapse. So this was also significant. The more the number of detoxifications previously, the more the chances of relapse that was observed. Association of education use with the status of relapse. This was also significant, as you can see. Discussion. In my study, association of duration of heroin use, status of IV drug use, number of previous detoxifications had a highly significant association with status of relapse. So these were the significant findings of my study. In our study, association of education use with status of relapse was found to be statistically significant. Thus, this showed as the number of educated patients increase, the chances of relapse go down, so it is inversely proportional. Most of the findings of our study were supported by Chalana et al. This was a study I have quoted. Relapsed patients abused greater amount and used injections more commonly as compared to non-relapsed group. Longer duration of abuse was also a significant risk factor. Patients with past attempt of opioid detoxification and family history of alcohol use had decreased possibility of maintaining remission during the 1 year period. They show that there were more chances of relapse. Smith et al. Also showed that greater amount of and longer duration history of injecting and 3 times lifetime heroin quit were significant predictors of relapse. Limitations of my study: the study sample size was small. The sample size was 200. The sample was restricted to patients with heroin dependence attending the de-addiction center. Caution should be exercised when trying to journalize the results of this study, as the study was conducted in the center, so it cannot be fully journalized to the public because the sample size was not that much in thousands. In our study, no control groups were taken. We had taken only the relapsed cases. There can be other factors associated with the relapse also, which could not be investigated, such as the family history and biological factors, because these require further evaluation containing genetics and all. So conclusion: relapsed following addiction treatment is very common. There is an urgent need to cover all schools, colleges and university with awareness programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Piyush. Well presented. It's the common problem with opioids and which emphasize though small, came to a very conclusion. Mainly, most of the cases do relapse. Their age very important to be stated that from 14 years to 25 years. Second factor, the route of administration of drug, IV users or injectable users are more prone to relapse. And number of admission or number of treatment users. Then absconded regarding absconded, some will go to jail, some will need some legal trouble. But most of these patients, they need money and they ultimately try to procure money by any means, including criminal activity. Well, any question from the audience? Thank you, Dr. Piyush.
What are the coping mechanisms used by these patients? So, you have to take care of style of coping mechanism. They use strategies or
So coping mechanisms or not?
Even when you walk down relapse,
Sir, because he is my guide.
that's why I was asking you the questions. That they are still busy.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. I would request Dr. K.P. Sharma to please felicitate Dr. Piyush Mahajan with the certificate.
I would like to invite sir.
sir, what was that? Your contribution is very much.
I would request Dr. P.D. Garg to please felicitate our chairperson, Dr. K.P. Sharma, with the memento and the certificate.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you so much, sir, for waiting and your patience, sir. We would like to start with the next session from 9 to 10. Sir, we have our chairpersons, Dr. Shiv Prasad and Dr. Janet Banerjee. I would request you to please, sir, be on the dais if it is comfortable. Our speakers are Dr. Sanjay Kumar, Dr. Saurav and Dr. Ajay. So please start the session.
চলো স্পিকারে কথা বলবো একটু দেখি এখানে দেখা যায় স্পিকারে কথা বলবে ওকে কিছুক্ষণ ধরবে তারপরে পুরো স্ক্রিনে আর ওখানে ওটি আমাকে যদি না থাকে স্ক্রিনে নিয়ে বা এখানে যে বসে থাকবে তাকে নিয়ে খালি রাখবে আমিও ভালো যাচ্ছি
Morning everybody. Today it's a good topic and what have to be done in this field because the data.
Where is ours?
Who is coming? The data which are coming. Recently a survey was done by NETC and in which population of near about 5 lakh something 5 crore is suffering from this, and that pharmacological and non-pharmacological treatment is also not doing so good because the treatment is only modest and the relapse rate is also 80%. So to overcome the challenges, how we can do our best. These the topics which are chosen and presenting by our good presenters, great faculty from DIMS and CIP Ranchi. Over, sir.
I have nothing to say. Start.
Thank you, Chairperson sirs, for giving us this opportunity to delve into a field which is not very, very popular in our country. So, it's about self-help group in addiction, in drug addiction, and how this has become as an approach towards sustainable recovery. So I'll be delving more on the origin and development of self-help groups in the contemporary world. So, first of all, why there is a need to discuss a self-help group as such. There are many obvious various reasons. The first and foremost is that in recent years we find that there is an increasing re-emergence of interest in recovery from addiction, and this has mostly accompanied by a shift in how the treatment and care are being delivered, with various recovery support services emerging as a key intervention to help people maintain recovery from addiction. And as you know, addiction is a chronic illness with great propensity for relapse, and the treatment that is mostly available in dedicated de-addiction services, be it detoxification or the treatment of dependence as such, these are not just one-shot intervention. What happens when a patient leaves a dedicated service or facility, that is more important. So ongoing care is critically important for long-term recovery to basically prevent relapse. And there are various ways to provide this ongoing care, and one of this is through self-help groups. And it has been indicated that peer recovery support and mutual aid are effective for those in the process of recovery, and self-help groups are definitely an effective and cost-efficient way of supporting long-term recovery. the need is also there because the concept of aftercare and long-term recovery is very, very important. This particular aspect is gaining popularity, especially in both United States and United Kingdom. And if you see aftercare as a concept, though it does not have a very widely recognized definition as such, but it can be considered as continued support after a service user has left the structured treatment, with its primary goal being to sustain the treatment gains that have been achieved through the structured treatment and then further develop community reintegration. So obviously, the most of the treatment that is available for addicted individuals are like detoxification clinics, then all those psychological intervention, be it relapse prevention, those things are pretty well established and they are there. But what happens after individual leaves the dedicated services? This is more important. So aftercare has been considered as a vital component of recovery because it has significant contribution to the effective treatment, comprehensive effective treatment, and also it has significant influence on the long-term recovery outcome, which my colleague who will be presenting further this particular symposium will delve into that aspect as well. And despite of the significant implication of self-help group on recovery from addiction, very little appears to be known of how this happens and what is the association between self-help group and the recovery per se. And as you know, no matter how sparsely or generously all the potential source of help for addicted individual they are there in the society, a significant number of these people they turn to each other for support, guidance, understanding, practical advice, and far more a sense of belongingness by joining various self-help organizations. So this is why I think we should be discussing self-help group organization, or variously called as mutual help group in contemporary psychiatry. And though there are millions of people, they are affiliated to some or other self-help organizations, and all the self-help groups they make the same much debated claim of improving the lives of their member. But despite of these they have diverse histories, structures, philosophies, procedures, and membership. And if you see this particular claim that they improve the lives of the members, and the number of individuals, those who are affiliated to these self-help organization, one would assume that they have been a major focus for various healthcare and public health policy planning, but this is not the case. This is again very, very important. Most of the policies, public health policies, they kind of ignore this particular aspect. Then, given this claim, one would also assume that they are something which must be studied or researched as intensely as other professional treatment which is available for addiction. Again, here also you'll find that there are very few, or it is not studies as intensely as other forms of treatment available for addiction. So these are some of the factors I think which are important as far as to see that why we should be discussing self-help group in the management of addiction per se. And if you come to the roots of self-help groups activity in the field of addiction, you'll see self-help perspective can be traced to its roots in various forms of civic traditions, basically in Europe, in the late 19th century. And the goal of these self-help initiatives were to form a cooperation for various artisan, craftsmen, dairies and wine factories in Italy especially. And it was not health or addiction per se, it was basically because of community's response to poverty. So, which was to pull these individuals together towards consensus and solidarity and to form associations rather than resorting to various sort of conflicts and competitions. So, given this form of organized solitary among people who shared similar sort of concerns and priorities, this has further been recognized as an important element in a wide selection of healing practices around the world, and this is how, from a sort of social movement, it get into the health and addiction this way. And the principle of mutual self-help for many years been applied to medicines, mental health, education, as well as in addiction therapy. And currently mutual self-help concepts are more refined and tailored to meet the need of particular population, as reflected in a variety of self-help organizations, and most of them are derived from the Alcoholic Anonymous, which came into existence in 1935. And within the field of drug treatment, if you see, the self-help emerged at the grassroots level as a reaction to the traditional and somewhat authoritarian medical model, where a patient would come to a clinician and say, "Doctor, please help me." So patient had little influence on the type of treatment provided, so he had a very passive role. So on the one hand, there exists the predominantly passive role of the receiver of help, and on the other hand, there is an active patient or client who is taking all the responsibility and ownership for finding solution to his problem. This is how there was a shift from predominantly authoritarian active role of clinician to the empowerment of the patient as well in self-help group. So self-help emphasize another thing is that it emphasizes social interaction between the members of a particular the group, and in that way they also represent the person's social network. And by using the group as a social network, the individual is capable of interacting with the other and feel empowered to change his problems. And the group also motivates and challenges the individual to make all those difficult decisions that many of them would not like to face. So as I told, the first widely recognized self-help group that demonstrated that help could be received from outside orthodox traditional medical model of treatment was Alcoholic Anonymous in 1935, and it was basically power to the people's social movement, as I told you, from in 1960s, with provided a sort of platform to the evolvement of self-help group. Then in 1980s, self-help support system such as various sort of self-help clearing houses which provided information and referral. Apart from the poverty, this is again in the 80s how various sort of self-help systems evolved in North America and Germany. And also in the 80s, the World Health Organization established a working group on self-help and health, and this resulted in many international reports on self-help. Many were published from UK, Germany, US, Canada, New Zealand, And then from 90s onward, we see that emergence of internet online self-help groups after the revolution in communication technology. So this is how the roots of self-help group activities in the field of addiction evolved. And if you define, I think the successive speaker will delve into this aspect also, but self-governing groups. Self-help groups are basically self-governing group whose members share a common health concern, give each other emotional support and material aid, charge either no fee or very minimum fee for membership, and place high value on experiential knowledge. This is very, very important as far as self-help groups are concerned. This experiential knowledge, in the belief that this experiential knowledge provides a spatial understanding of the situation. And in addition to providing mutual support, such groups may also be involved in information, education, material aid, social advocacy in their community. So why the way it evolved, why self-help groups are being set up and encouraged in contemporary world. So you can see the need for a self-help component in addiction field is supported by the, as I told, healthcare and social welfare system in the community, and by the user of these services and the caregivers. WHO Declaration 1978, Alma Ata Declaration, Section 4 also says that just as the government must provide adequate health and social measures, the people of any country have the right and duty to participate individually or collectively in the planning and implementation of healthcare. So this particular section of Alma Ata Declaration is very, very important as far as the responsibility of individual. So after this, any discussion on public health have taken into account that self-help is an important feature of public health policies also. Then I said there is a growing hostility to professional healthcare model in terms of obviously effectiveness, and this has caused people to come together to help each other in a process of empowerment. And then obviously the hierarchical orientation in which the professional system is liable to undermine the rights of the individual to heal himself and shape his environment. And in this situation where there is a feeling of professional letdown, self-help group emerged to provide an alternative pathway to obtain services already present in the professional set programs. This is again very important aspects. Just as self-help group may have emerged as a result of professional lack of individual based care, they may also be a response of social inadequacy. So especially you see the kind of families that are coming up, neutral family, the individualistic kind of approach to various social issues. So these are very, very important. The absence of natural support system is lacking. So in most of the developed countries, and the socio-cultural isolation present in the developing world as well, they make self-help group as an attractive, natural response to these conditions. And self-help group serve as an extended compassionate families and act as communities that provide mutual support. And this is also a venue to discover new lifestyle based on mutual trust and understanding. So these elements lie at the core of self-help groups. Some of the ideologies, I think subsequent speaker will delve into these in a little more detail, but this particular aspect is also very, very important, wherein helper therapy principle, which states that while it may be uncertain that people receiving help are always benefited, it seems more likely that people giving help are profiting from the role. So who is benefiting from whom? This particular aspect is also very important. Then, as I said, experiential knowledge is very, very important for the group development by accumulating the experience of all the members who have undergone common difficulties. Then the group's view of problem is different from the obviously medical and professional view. And then the fourth ideology, which is based on the view that self-help group work as an voluntary organization rather than a form of therapy or treatment per se. A little bit about the group culture, which is determined mostly by the attitude and custom, is established by practices of the group members. And the culture of the group should be dynamic, and it is marked by certain tenets, and these are first, a strong sense of unity to work in cohesion with each other. Then group should consider and respect the ideas and suggestions and views put forth by fellow members. And our democratic decision making is very, very important. Then freedom of expression of ideas and feelings, so that subdued ideas and thoughts should not remain there to increase the disparity between the members. And how, if you see, the groups are formed, there are 4 stages of group formation. The first one is the introductory session stage, in which explanation of the concept of self-help group is provided, and this forms the forming stage, the first stage. Then the second stage is the storming session, where people ask queries, they express their concern, the hidden anxiety, fear are being expressed, and all the individual conflict and group interest, they are brought forth, and the conflict is resolved. Then the norming stage comes, where self-help concepts are being internalized, and people get themselves recognized as a member of the group. And the performance stage, where basically the task and maintenance functions are realized. Now, if you see, the self-help element is the distinctive feature of self-help groups, then what are the other features? So, some of them are like they have identical interest among themselves. Then flexibility in thinking, decision making, and implementing the plans enable the group to have a broader framework of mechanism and operation. And it also brings a shared sense of responsibility. Then the documentation process is simple, so it becomes very clear. Then collective leadership to promote group cohesion and effective integration of goals and communication. And as I said, mutual decision making is very, very important to bring group sustainability in the organization. And group solidarity and self-help gives an impulse towards collective action and articulations. An idea of self-help provides larger scope for integrated mechanism of group functioning. Then obviously advocacy, awareness, and socio-economic empowerment, it gives a further thrust for the effective group functioning, and mutual trust and confidence for successful functioning of the group for a prolonged period of time. So this is all from my side, but to sum up so far, we can say that self-help activities organized by grassroots initiatives as a reaction to traditional medical model, then a shift from the specialist or doctor being the expert to individual being expert of their own situation. This is very, very important. And self-help activities emerged from individuals' desire to share a common problem with others who have similar needs. And the group is a bridge for individual between personal experiences, social relations, and cultural meanings. It also shows a shift from predominantly passive role of receiver to an active role of participating and taking personal responsibility in the healing process. Then if experiential knowledge is very important, as I told, and a focus on here and now with no excursion into childhood memories, a shift in individuals' perception from powerless to empowerment thinking. So, and de-emphasis on any sort of leadership, so everyone is equal in the group, and a combination of cognitive and experiential learning, and a perspective of the situation and personal responsibility for his or her cure. So this is the sum up, and to finish, I will just quote one of the proverb of therapeutic committee: "Man helping, man to help himself." I think this is the motto here. Thank you.
কিছু হচ্ছে না।
First of all, thank you. A very good morning for giving the opportunity. Respect to my honorable chairperson. I would like to continue where my previous speaker, Dr. Munda, has left. Coming here. Okay. As the title said, the approach towards sustainable recovery. So just a few things before we dive in the self-help approach. What is the concept of recovery? We know, still it's important. So some substance abuse and mental health service administration, they told a process of change through which individuals improve their health and wellness, live a self-directed life, and strive to reach their full potential. Full of heavy English words, but probably it cannot be simpler, much more as of now. So what are the dimensions of that? There is a dimension from health, there is a dimension from home, there is a community dimension, there is a purpose. All of these themes are included in the definition of recovery. What are the guiding principles they have told about? There is hope, pathways, relational, culture, which would address trauma, that should be holistic. There must be strength and responsibility in the whole process. There will be peer support, and there should be respect in a recovery from substance use disorder. And it should be person-driven. So there are some theoretical perspective, social control from social learning perspective, from behavioral economics, which says that if there had been alternative choice, probably the person would choose that alternative than choosing the taking substance. And lastly, the stress and coping, theoretical point of view recovery, this influence recovery. But what about a spiritual perspective, which came off very recently by Galanter? He elaborated on this thing and talked about few dimensions. One is affective state, that sense of well-being or subjective happiness. There should be containment of one's life, there should be positive affect, and there should be feeling of support. And what about an existential dimension of spiritual recovery, that the meaningfulness in one's life? And then we talked about something called flow, that experience associated with engaging one's highest strengths and talents to meet achievable challenge. So these are the things he talked about spiritual recovery, and this should be an important dimension or important process to achieve success and recovery. And last, obviously, spirituality itself in that spiritual perspective. So anyway, keeping this in mind in background, just as Sir has told, the most recent literature is talking about mutual help, the replace the term self-help, just for the very, very basic reason. If you talk about those proverbs that self-help is the best help, God help him who helps themselves, who help himself. In this context, self is only you, the one individual. So why not using the mutual help group rather than using self-help group? For the whole presentation, self-help is equivalent to mutual help. It can be used interchangeably, but of late the literature is more using the term mutual help. So why mutual help might be better? That's just told. By definition, social. The groups are social rather than individualistic. It typically characterized by emotional supportiveness. So probably mutual help is a better term, and I just wanted to insist on that. And again, there's a big definition, but the real thing is self-governing groups whose members share a common health problem and gives emotional support, material aid, and it doesn't charge any fee or a very small fee, and place high value on, as previously emphasized, on experiential knowledge in the belief that it provides special understanding of a situation. That's the goal, special understanding of a situation. And it can also be involved in information, education, material aid, and social advocacy. As previously also emphasized that though the origin and the history is quite dated, decades back, but the peer-reviewed literature is coming very, very recently. So whatever existed is their own white paper or other documents, but so-called the scientific evidence-based peer-reviewed literature has just come up very recently. So what are the essential features they have described here in the book Evidence-Based Adjunctive Treatment in 2008, Kelly and Yeterian, and they also extended this thing to another article in 2011, the role of mutual help group in extending the framework of treatment. So the essential features are members share a problem or status. That is the first very, very basic feature. They have to share a common problem. There would be self-directed leadership. You are leader of your own. There would be an experiential knowledge, and that would be valued. Reciprocal helping would be the norm. Lack of fees, that may vary based on group, but still majority it's a lack of fees. Voluntary association, inclusion of some personal change goals, depending on the individual. Develop philosophy and program of change. There will be spiritual or religious emphasis. The groups will be nested within a larger organizational structure. Political advocacy, though I'm not sure that was written in the textbook, I'm not sure how, as far as the literature I have gone through, how political advocacy was helping those groups, I could not make out. So the internet presence might be there, membership by relations of the substance abusing participant, and defined role for professionals. So these are the optional features. The earlier slides was on the essential features. So basically, whatever we talked about this mutual health group, this can classify only two types. One is 12-step approach, the other is, I give them as a non-12-step approach. So what are the 12-step approach? And when you talk about 12-step approach or non-12-step approach, two or three terms come very close. One is Alcoholic Anonymous, the other is 12-step facilitation, the other is 12-step treatment. Now, Alcoholic Anonymous is a non-professional community-based fellowship that provides help through a network of informal gathering convented in rented rooms, venues, such as churches and hospitals. And just for this slide, to be clear at very onset, that these three are different. Now, how they are different? Now, the 12-step facilitation or the DSF is the name given to a professional manualized intervention designed to facilitate engagement in AA. TSF is given to push you, to engage you towards AA. TSF is not AA. And what is 12-step treatment? It typically refers to a residential program in which patients receives various interventions but also are educated in depth about AA and the 12 steps, may formally work through some of those steps. So, though they are very close, they are overlapping, but classically the concepts are a little bit different from each other. So what are the common therapeutic principles? As rightly pointed out, is the helper principle, that those who help others help themselves by reinforcing their own dedication to change, increasing their perception of the importance to others. So you help someone, and thereby in the process you are helping yourself. That is the classic. That is the core of the helper principle. So now let's come to the few examples of the mutual health groups which has been existed and which has been mentioned in several kind of literature, documents, and etc. So I try to make it chronologically. So starting from Alcoholic Anonymous, then came narcotics, then cocaine, then nicotine, then methadone, then marijuana. In 88 came rational recovery. In 94 came SMART, self-management and recovery training. And 1986 came SOS, Secular Organization for Sobriety. In 76 came WFS, Women for Sobriety. In 94 came Moderation Management. In 99 came Life Free. These are more or less the list of the available mutual health groups. So just tried ki all these anonymous works have similar principle. They are 12-step approach and their target is abstinence. These three, National Recovery, SMART and WFS, SMART state code and WFS, Women for Sobriety, they follow a cognitive behavioral approach and their target also abstinence. This secular organization for sobriety and life ring, they all follow a humanistic approach and their target is also abstinence. So I tried to group the 12 groups who show similarity and dissimilarity among them. Last come moderation management, they also follow cognitive behavioral, but their target is not abstinence, moderate use, sort of the parallel to harm reduction of today's literature. So what are the dimensions of these mutual health groups? There is relationship dimension, that's quality of interpersonal relationship will lead to recovery. There is some goal orientation dimension, where the key areas in which the group encourage personal growth is more follow group dynamics. And the system maintenance dimension, that extent to which a group embodies clear expertise. So these are the lever or the mutual health group process, group recovery process to work on. So now we jump to the specific mutual health group. So first come to Alcoholic Anonymous. We know 12 steps. Now the American Society of Addiction Medicine textbook talks about 12 traditions and 12 promises also. That working the 12 steps and adhering to the 12 tradition, a person lead to possibilities of listed in the 12 promise. And when he achieved in the 12 promise, a stage of recovery has been achieved. That's what they are trying about these all steps, traditions and promise. Probably we are quite familiar with the 12 steps, so I'm not going into the details. But if you follow, if you analyze those steps, in number of those steps, the word God is mentioned. The higher power is mentioned. So that is something to take from this. And I'm continuing the rest of the 6 of the 12 steps. And last is also important, carrying the message of the 12 steps to others in need. So just highlighting few of them. Come to the 12 tradition. The American, they have talked about this. Again, it's an exhaustive list. You can take anyone. I think number 7, every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contribution. And with these steps and tradition, somebody would land to 12 promise and should be told that has crossed a few, ahead road. Say, for example, number 1, we are going to know a new freedom and new happiness. Take number 6, that feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. So, these are the work on steps and traditions, they have landed on these 12 promises. So, the mechanism, the ideology of 12 steps approach, essentially, the approach is initially developed from the experience of early people, sort of founder member, those. So, what are those? Spiritual awakening. In their own literature, they talked about spiritual awakening. So, spirituality is defined as that which gives people meaning and purpose in life. So, it is redundant to say right now that in today's platform that definitely this is not equivalent to religiosity. So that's a different thing altogether. And spiritual awakening in their own monograph in page number 569 they have talked about that with few exceptions, it is their own word, with few exceptions our members find that they have tapped an unsuspected inner resource which they presently identify with their own conception of power greater than themselves. So they found a higher power inside themselves and they now think that power can do a better thing, which is spirituality, which was untapped before, which they have probably has found the source of it in the group. Mark Galanter has elaborated on this spirituality and recovery and 12-step broken an empirical model in a special article. So what are the other mechanisms? This positive psychology, that is a relevant approach, but it has been found that the effect of positive psychology was also one another factor responsible for that 12-step approach. The social networking, that is another way which helped in those 12-step approach. And social networking affects as a buffer for the negative effects and other events in their life. The attributing meaning to, that is another thing, another way to mechanism of to help in 12-step approach. A jealous group, it's not jealous, it's a jealous group. So how does acceptance of a new perspective spirit transform their attitude? So again, it's a coherence. Just for example, a distressed inductee is operantly reinforced to develop strong affiliative feeling towards the group members and accept its ideology. The group is extremely tightly bound. So that's what they're trying to say, intensely jealous too. When somebody is recruited and somebody started attending those groups, they feel a strong, reinforced feeling of affirmative feeling to the group, and that reduce the risk factors for the substance users. Spiritual recovery movements I talked about. These are one of the pillar of their mechanism of change. Another is, apart from helper principle, is the fellowship. Fellowship in the 12 steps. What is fellowship? It's a mutual association of persons on equal and friendly terms, a mutual sharing as of experience, activity, or interest. So this fellowship approach has certain clearly benefit in a 12-step setting. That its fellowship means I am not a group member exactly. I am a member, also a fellow for other person. Thereby, this cycle is going on, and this fellowship has a good beneficial effect on the ultimate outcome of the 12-step approach. So what happens in this fellowship? Recovery behaviors are learned, modeled, and supported. And sharing of addiction and recovery experiences may impart important technical aspects. Group theory dynamics play a role in these fellowships, and health promoting social network changes come with these fellowships. Fellowship aspect of the 12-step. So what are the other common therapeutic factors? These are the main common empirical, classical therapeutic factors behind 12-step. But what are the other factors which also works? There is aspects of altruism work, universality, imitative behavior, installation of hope, imparting information, catharsis. These are all factors plays permutation in combination, in each and every 12-step approach. So, but what was happening? All this came from for a very scanty number of literature. Some of them has been replicated, some of them has been peer-reviewed, some of them not. So of late, in 2009, Kelly tried to have a change mechanism towards a comprehensive model. So they talked that they reviewed the whole literatures and talked, there are some common factors of all 12-step approach which works. There are some specific anonymous practice which is responsible, and there are some social spiritual factor which is responsible for change. They just classified the change mechanism in these three types and tried to generate a model, therapeutic developmental stage. It's exhaustive, but the main thing to understand is that they told that whenever a person is in a mutual health group approach, the initial there will be abstinence, remoralization, then will be remediation, sobriety, and there should be rehabilitation, recovery. If a group therapy, a mutual health group to be successful, a member of the mutual health group to achieve recovery, probably their proposed model probably would go in these stages. They also talked about, so the row number 3, that corresponding Alcoholic Anonymous relevant steps they are trying to finalize. So the steps 1 to 3 for remoralization, steps 4 to 9 for remediation, and steps 10 to 12 for rehabilitation. And they also see the explanatory principle and the mechanism. So there is a barrier about this thing. There are some barrier also in Alcoholic Anonymous groups, mutual health groups. So now come to 12-step facilitation therapy. This came from Project Match, a 5-year study. This is the where a clinician can play. So a highly structured individual manual guided approach, It's a set of core topics. In 12-step facilitation, there will be acceptance, means you can, if you are a clinician in your own clinic, you can offer a 12-step facilitation approach to an individual. By this approach, you can push towards engage in 12-step mutual health groups. There will be surrender, there will be cognitive, emotional, behavioral, and social, and also spiritual. They are published in the manual in the project match studies. So these are the where the clinician can work on. Next come to the non-12-step approach. The first is self-management and recovery training, SMART in short. So in non-12-step approach, their tagline is discover the power of choice. That's the goes on. It's a non-profit organization, Australia. So their goal is to support individuals who have chosen to abstain. Their approach is, let's jump to their 4-point program. That is their flagship program of the SMART. The 4-point program offers point 1 building and maintaining motivation, point 2 coping with urges, point 3 managing thoughts, feelings and behavior, point 4 living a balanced life. I highlighted the online link because they work through that online only. You can, and that online thing, that's their own website, and that is the most authentic thing about this group. So the information is available there only. Just as you saw, my successive speaker will talk on very few of late recent peer-reviewed literature is coming on about their outcome. So what about the mechanism and the operational thing is available there. So tools and techniques used in SMART are stages of change plan worksheet, cost-benefit analysis, disarm and destructive image and self-talk awareness, hierarchy of values, brainstorming. You see, we are finding similarity with the cognitive behavioral approach. Their meeting format is check-in when the meeting starts. How has your previous work been? Discussion using CBT tools and technique. There is some sharing solution. There is some checkout plan for the next 7 days. Thus the meeting goes on. There are some meeting guidelines. Next come WFS, Women for Sobriety, non-12-step approach. Again, the information is available there. Their flagship program is New Life program. It's still going on, founded by 1975. There are 13 acceptance statements, 6 levels of recovery. They have given their acceptance statement. Just like their 12-step, here is 13 acceptance and 6 levels of recovery. And New Life, the tools are positive reinforcement, cognitive strategies, dynamic group involvement. Next come SOS, Secular Organization for Sobriety, non-12-step approach. Their tagline is no God at the bottom of a glass. Just a little bit thing that the earlier A group, based on spirituality God, they told there is no God at the bottom of the glass. You have to do your own self. So there is a principle of secular organization sobriety, and this is the most recent life ring. It came just 2019-99. They according to 3S philosophy, sobriety, secularity, and self-help. 3S philosophy is elaborated. They have beautifully elaborated on their website. And just to talk about that, they say there is an addicted self and the sober self. So when two addicted person comes close, if their sober selves at the same time predominates, so one person would help another. That's they try to illustrate this way. Thank you. Thank you for kind attention.
Good morning, everyone. So after this presentation, so basically I am focusing on outcome of this self-help group intervention for addiction. So the purpose was to discuss outcome, and it will be discussed with introduction, addiction-related outcome, that is evidence-based studies and surveys, meta-analysis, predictor of responses, discussion and conclusion. So basically alcohol has a very relapsing course. Some studies says it is 20 to 50% in short-term remission rate, and for 4 years it is up to 90% remission rate. And expected outcome may be sustained reduction in alcohol and drug use, that is the main aim of the outcome, and sustained increase in personal health and social functioning. and sustained reduction in public health and public safety threats. So these are the usually addiction related outcomes. So number one is abstinence, improved physical and mental health, uh, lack of legal status, socio-occupational functioning, reduction in risk behavior, and association with abuse services, linkage or association with substance abuse services or aftercare. So these are the, but these three are important target: abstinence, functionality, and reduced criminal behavior. Evidence-based studies, there are earlier studies which has in fact shows poor response. These are the certain studies. To cut short, I am not going into the detail, but these are the studies in 1999, 2006 with 67% success rate. Then there was some ECTs also, RCTs, which was conducted, and they have shows ki drug use is equally, there are three groups, inpatient treatment, AA, and choice of option, and it was equal in drug use, but readmission rate was much reduced in treatment group, and it was most poorer in AA group. So that is one of the. So with that cost, with readmission, therefore AA group was increased. Then there was again some RCTs also, which has 10 years follow-up, and that summarizes that there are certain improvement in the addiction outcome. Then some certain systemic review, which also conducted, and it concluded that it is associated with better or greater attendance, it is related with involvement and active participation, and proximity favors recovery. So these are the three important outcomes that was concluded in systemic reviews. Similarly, certain other studies are also there, which shows the different success rate with the formal in comparison to formal treatment and AA group. Then there is one membership survey that was conducted most recently in 2014, and which claims the length of sobriety was increases with connected with the self-help group. Then certain meta-analysis was also conducted in the studies of self-help group. First was in 1996, and in fact the result was divided into outpatient and inpatient setting, and AA participation and drinking outcome was more strongly related with outpatient sample. Better design studies shows positive psychosocial outcome also. Another meta-analysis was in 1999, and it again meta-analyzed 21 studies, and AA model treatment performed no better or worse than alternatives. So it was non-conclusive kind of findings. But more recently, the recent meta-analysis in 2014, it was published, and it finally concluded that increasing AA attendance leads to short and long-term decrease in alcohol consumption. Then there was Cochrane review on the Alcoholic Anonymous and other 12-step programs for alcohol dependence review, and it concludes that AA may help patient to accept treatment and keep patient in treatment more than alternative treatments. There are certain predictor of responses like demographic, substance-related, spiritual and religious and personality variables. There may be low severity of dependence, is again good predictor. Few psychiatric symptoms at admission, motivation beyond and pre-contemplation stage, being employed or self-supporting, having family and social support for sobriety, perceived AA group cohesiveness. The effectiveness of 12-step group may be somewhat compromised by low retention rate and decline in attendance beginning 3 to 6 months after initiation of attendance. Then this is again another meta-analysis for the recovery perspective, and again it has a predictor of response that includes having a AA sponsor work the 12th step of the program, leading a meeting in increasing their degree of participation and sponsored other AA members. So coming to discussion, various research have shown the AA effectiveness criteria, the magnitude of effect, dose response effect, consistent effect, temporally accurate effect, plausibility and specific effects. So most of the studies 1 to 5, basically I'm not going to the detail for the time constraint, but these are the effects which are basically fulfilled by the most of the RCT and supported by most of the metastasis. But only the specific effect, the causal effect is difficult to establish. That is the problem with the studies or research related with self-help groups. Basically, there are varying demographic factors, concurrent comorbidities and medications, concurrent medications are going on. Patient motivation and stage of change is not established. Abstinence is necessary, but it is not a sufficient measure. Genetic predispositions are there. An acquired metabolic abnormality, learned negative behavior patterns, self-medication of underlying psychiatric or physical medical problems, and other lack of family and community supports are also important. Limitations, RCTs may be basically inappropriate to self-help group evaluation. Basically, that is beyond any professional control. Participation cannot deny treatment to control, cannot standardize what they do or how often they do. No exclusion criteria possible for participants. So, coming to very short conclusion, that ongoing care is critically important for long-term recovery. Available evidence supports mutual health groups are effective for recovery in addiction and treatment. MHG is effective and cost-efficient way of supporting long-term treatment. Thank you.
Well presented, and the topics were very relevant, and it is the need of an hour. So we can further do and make some policies, and some things can be come out through Indian Psychiatric Society also to do better in this field, because already we are less of mental health professionals, so these can be a better option for the substance dependence and harmful use, because the population is already near about 5 crore and 70 lakhs. So now, because we are already running out of time, so I give my co-chairperson.
No, now I request, it is the time for asking the question. So I request anybody want to know anything, please ask. Yes, sir.
Few points I thought of bringing out is that inclusion in the self-help group should be basically based on motivation, and the process of motivation, it keeps on consistently changing. So at the time of entering into SHG, the individual will be motivated. Subsequently, that can change. That is one point. Second point, with regard to forming the self-help group, we should, as a professionals, we should see that comorbidities are ruled out. If it is not ruled out, and if such people are there in the self-help group, they are likely to contaminate the group, which will have a big negative impact. So in most of the self-help group, a professional is not included because it is said it is self-help. So unless or until a professional is there to rule out the comorbidities, the possibility of
contamination of the group is likely to be very high. These are the points I thought of highlighting. Think about it. I think none of you talked about contamination of the group. Quite often it happens.
Very well taken. I request all the speakers to come.
I think sir has very well said. The only thing is that yes, motivation is very important in any such activity. That's why this is something which starts when the individual has approached a sort of recovery phase. So to extend the recovery and to rehabilitate, so the person is already, if you see the motivation cycle, one can very easily relapse and again come to pre-contemplation stage. So yes, that is very important. Contamination do happen, and in our country and elsewhere you will see mostly these are taken up by various social welfare agencies. They conduct all this rather than the health agencies. So this is also one very important aspect.
Sir, rightly address that. Definitely, comorbidities is not, the groups are not for them who was having dual diagnosis. Definitely that should be ruled out, then only the 12-step facilitation and the push towards group approach, mutual approach should be taken. Yes, sir. Now it's over.
When you go through the addiction, there is a pre-addiction state. Then it comes into a state of contemplation. Then they go into the so-called recovery or de-addiction program. Once the de-addiction program is completed, they go into a state what is called a relapse. Relapse is different from re-addiction. So you have to distinguish between the relapse and re-addiction. So also if you are able to identify the pre-addiction stage, that is probably before initiating the chemical or drug or behavior, whatever it is. That is the most risky and dangerous period. If we professionals can identify the pre-addictive state, that may help. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I would request our chairpersons to please felicitate our faculties with the certificate. Dr. Sanjay Kumar Munna. Dr. Saurav Kanra. And Dr. Ajay Babu. I would request Dr. Shushupal to please felicitate our chairpersons. Dr. Dinesh Banerjee. Dr. Shiv Prasad. Thank you so much, sir, for the session. Thank you.
সামনে দিয়ে ওটা কি করে ধরবো?
এখান দিয়ে উঠলে কি ধরবো?
এইখান থেকে না, ওই ধার থেকে উঠছে না,
এই দিক থেকে উঠবো।
এই ধার থেকে তো একজন উঠছে, বাকি তিনজন তো ওটা দিয়ে উঠছে। টেস্ট আছে চিপে পোডিয়াম ফিক্সড করে দাও। হলেও তো প্রেজুডিকেশন, আমি ওখানে একটু গেলাম না,
লাইট ছেড়ে দিয়েছি।
ওখানকার লাইভ তো চলছেই তো,
ছুটছে।
ওখানকার লাইভের জন্যই তো এখানে বসে আছি, না অন্য হচ্ছে।
ভাই টাইমারটা কেউ দেখে যা।
টাইম লাগে, টাইমই না। প্রজেক্টর বুঝতে মনে হলে লাইট নেই, বহুত প্রবলেম। বলেছি মোটামুটি যেন বোঝা যায় এমন করে পড়া।
লাইটটা বেশি।
ফেসবুক লাইভ, ইউটিউব লাইভ,
ফেসবুক লাইট, এটা ফেসবুক লাইট।
ইউটিউবেও লাইভ।
Secretary IPS West Bengal State Branch Dr. Ranjan
এটা কালকে
Bhattacharya and Organizing Secretary
কালকে
of the North
ফেসবুকে চলছে।
আমার বাড়ি নিতাই আছে না, নিতাইয়ের বাড়ি দাদা,
নিজের দাদা
পাশের সাইড, ঘরের সাইড।
নিজেই তো দিয়ে দিলে হবে। পারমানেন্ট
কী বলে না,
কাজ হলে পয়সা পাওয়া যায় না। কাগজ কত?
গোপালদা, ও গোপালদা, বাপু নাই 11টা বেজে
বাপনের নাম্বার আছে?
হ্যাঁ, অফিসের কয়েকটা নাম্বার আছে মোটামুটি।
যেদিন কাজ হয়
যেদিন কাজ হয় না অফিসে ঘুমাই।
পয়সা পাস না। মাসে 15টা হয় না?
এই তো এই মাসে 8টা হয়েছে,
8টা
মাসে দিতে গেছে 8টা।
কত কত করে দেয়?
60 এই রিসেন্টলি আমি দিয়েছি।
350 টাকা।
আর দুজন এসেছিল তারা 300 টাকা করে। না এসছে, আছে একজন পরীক্ষা বলে গেছে বাড়ি, একজন আছে সে রেড রোড আছে সেটা। দাঁড়াও, কাজ নেই তো। ফিনান্সে কাজ করা ভালো, কাজ कम पाओगे
ये राइट क्लिक करोगे,
কিন্তু
टाइमर में से कोई टाइम देगा तो ये टाइम लगा दोगे।
तो ये पूरा सेशन 10 मिनट हो रहा है तो एक बार ही करना पड़ेगा
मासे কথা হচ্ছে
करने से
500 টাকা
कोई टाइमर लगा Z करने से स्टार्ट X करने से रीसेट तो जितना करोगे वो 10 मिनट ही आएगा और इसका 15 मिनट हुआ तो उसको खाली 15 मिनट 10 मिनट 10 मिनट
দেখলাম 800 টাকা এই মাসে ওই তো আমার হিসাব হচ্ছে 8টা গাড়ি রেড রোডে কাজের করে যাবে রেড রোড 26 তারিখ আছে রাপুরে মডার্ন 27 তারিখ হয়ে যাবে 28 তারিখ দিয়ে বেরিয়ে আমি গেলে থাকি অনেকদিন কিন্তু ফোন অফিসে ফোন করলে আর চলে যাচ্ছে
বাড়িতে কতক্ষণ লাগে
3 ঘন্টা 3.5 ঘন্টা
মোদি সরকারকে যদি এখন বলি কাগজ দেখাও দেখাতে পারবে কে এসে আমাদের কাছ থেকে জিজ্ঞাসাবাদের জন্য কে আমাদের সিটিজেনশিপ নেওয়ার জন্য আমরা ওকে ইলেক্ট করেছি আমরা মানুষরা দেশের মানুষরা ওকে ইলেক্ট করেছে ওর এত সাহস চোর একটা নিজেকে বলে চকিদার আর চুরি করে লজ্জা করে না এত সংবিধানের উপর করে দিচ্ছে লজ্জা করে না আর এখানে মানুষের না খেয়ে পড়ছে গ্যাসের দাম 200 টাকা
পুরো ভর্তি হয়ে গেছে। সত্যি বাংলাদেশের কেন ওই কেন পুরো বের করে দিচ্ছে আমার সে যাই হোক না গোপালা তো রাউন্ড মারছে।
हाँ 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 हाँ